If death is the door to eternity, there is no doubt which place we'd like to step into. But is heaven just clouds, angelic music, and happiness? Or is there something more?
Well, like a fairy tales, like a castle, and like really nice.
I think it's going to be the prettiest thing you can imagine in the face of the earth. So softness, soft light, just warm feelings.
Golf course that just never ends.
I grew up hearing that heaven was a place far away that we would go to, that it wasn't here on earth. And I think we have this idea of clouds and harps and angels.
Yes, and cream cheese.
Cream cheese.
Yeah.
Chili on toast. We use it like butter.
Where did that idea come from?
It is fascinating. A lot of our theology about heaven and hell comes from medieval Renaissance periods, from painting, artwork, and times when theology was done by a small group of intellectual Christians who had a monopoly on the scriptures.
So our ideas of heaven came from this, not from this?
All the language about clouds and harps and so on, this is a way of saying this is the language we have traditionally used.
The target is genuine human living.
Bishop N.T. Wright, one of the leading thinkers on the afterlife.
But we know that this language is like a signpost pointing to something else.
The reality, he says, is not how it will look, but where it will be and what it will be like. And that's where descriptions of heaven vary.
Heaven is the fulfillment of God's intent.
A time of rest and refreshment and delight.
A place where you see the creativity of human beings and the creativity of God kind of brought together in a peaceful harmony.
Heaven will be wonderful.
No controversy there, but there may be some surprises. In N.T. Wright's book, Surprised by Hope, he says heaven is actually a holding place, a pit stop of sorts, not our final destination. Some call this protective state paradise, or even Abraham's bosom. But if it's just a waiting room, then do we just sit and wait?
Some would say it is the place where we sleep. It's the place where we rest while waiting for judgment. And others would say, no, paradise needs to be an active place where we are conscious and we are walking. It is, in a sense, an incomplete version of the future heaven.
A little different from our original picture, isn't it? But once we've eventually arrived at our final destination, what will we look like? And what will we do?
I do know it's a real physical world. It's a place where scientific research goes on because we have more things to learn. It's a place where organization and management goes on because people need to be organized.
What will we look like? Will we be young? Will we be old?
We'll be sexy. I'm so looking forward to that. We often think I'll go to heaven so I don't have to work anymore. Creative labor is a wonderful thing, and it's more of a release. It's where work and play kind of come together. And so we will all have things that we can do to serve creation, to serve each other.
So when we go to heaven, we'll be with God. No argument there. But another surprise is heaven may be closer than we think.
So when we go to heaven, that will be with God, with Christ. But then when God brings heaven and earth together, think about it as the new creation is the ultimate state. That's the key thing.
A new earth. Some even call it heaven on earth. But there are still so many unanswered questions, like the one all of us are literally dying to know.
I believe that majority of us will be living one day in a paradise earth.
Me.
In heaven, Mother Teresa's got to be there. My mom should be there for sure.
I guess people who have probably redeemed themselves.
Good people. Good-hearted people.
Hopefully you guys, everyone else, I'd like to think would be in heaven.
The New Testament gospel tells me that heaven is for those who receive Christ, who know Christ, who have trusted in Christ's death and resurrection for themselves. That's all I know. If God goes beyond that orbit, that's His choice. But He hasn't given me allowance to go beyond that orbit.
But the question of who will go and how we'll get there can sometimes be a touchy subject, one that Bruxy says can only be resolved by one person.
I think the answer is perfect. God has given us a gift in Christ to say He will perfect you, He will purify you, He will take away your sin, and He will infuse you with His righteousness so that you're made fit. You're still you, but you're now made fit for a perfect life in heaven.
So heaven is a choice? In the famous novel The Great Divorce, author C.S. Lewis paints a picture of heaven and hell and the choices that bring people to their final destination.
He believed that at death there was a waiting period, if you like, before we met God. He's trying to present one aspect of the Christian message, which is whatever life brings here in these 70 or 80 years on earth, there's a choice to be made, and choices are very important.
And it's a choice none of us are exempt from.
Everyone is en route for either heaven or hell. Lewis developed that thought, of course, didn't he? He said there are no ordinary people, because everybody you meet is going to be either a creature more glorious than anything you can imagine, or a creature more dreadful than anything you can imagine.
But while Lewis spoke in allegory, some say they have actually been to heaven and have even made a movie about the experience.
And you had traveled the world looking for that paradise, and here it was in front of me. I thought, I'm home. I'm home.
Mickey Robinson was 18 when he was severely injured in a plane crash.
Pilot yelled and says, "That's it, the engine quit, we're going down." And as the last skydiver was leaving, then the plane blew up.
With burns all over, he had lost sight in his right eye, suffered massive blood loss, and had an infection running through his body. The doctors didn't think he would survive. But one day, while lying on his hospital bed, he had an experience only he could describe.
I could feel my legs go through the springs of the hospital bed. And I had never heard of any of this stuff before from anybody. And all of a sudden I was just ejected into a spiritual world, and this world was more real. The colors were brighter, I was aware of eternity, which is mind-blowing.
But it's what he returned with that's changed his life.
I knew I would live forever, that God's going to love me forever, He's going to take care of me forever. It's impossible to think anything negative.
We've only scratched the surface of heaven, the eternal destination everyone looks up to. But what about the other eternal destination? The one no one wants to talk about.
It's a bottomless pit without any bottom. There's no life in it. It's eternal.